This video is all about the fancy apple ingredient in Pokemon Sleep, and we will go through comprehensively every single ingredient specialist, berry specialist, and skill specialist that has the fancy apple as one of its ingredient options. The main apple Pokemon is not too easy to pinpoint. There is not a single Pokemon of the ingredient specialist that carry triple apple. There could be some update in the future for that, but for now, there is just a lot of Pokemon that carry the double apple. And so we'll just go through all of it and hopefully make it a little bit easier on you to figure out which Pokemon to go for. Honorable mention here is the Nightcap Pikachu. This is the Pikachu that shows up with your Pokemon Go++. I have put in all the numbers here for the max level, which is 18 currently. And at that point, it has the frequency of an hour, and max inventory is 16. Don't think about this level 30 here. The max level is 18. And at that point, you will be getting 2 apples, 2 cacaos, or 2 Grappa berries per drop. I have not found any resources that gives an indication on the ingredient rate. In my opinion, probably the ingredient drops is around 30%, maybe 40%. I find that it is quite high, but then at times I just get a whole batch of Grappa berries, so it could just be anecdotal. But yeah, it is not overall a Pokemon you can rely on, but it will be giving you some supplemental apples and cacao, and those are nice for dessert weeks. So the main Pokemon, in my opinion, that you can consider for the apples is Pinsir. The one problem with Pinsir, as with a lot of the apple Pokemon, as you will see in this video, is they tend to be quite rare, they tend to be single stage evolutions, and the big bottleneck tend to be inventory. So Pinsir does not evolve, it has inventory 21, so after 3 procs of the level 60 apple, if you don't have any ingredient up on the Pinsir, you're gonna have a problem. Pinsir is super fast, so for the most part, what you are looking for in terms of the sub skills, we can cover this briefly because this will probably be a common denominator for most of these. You definitely want the ingredient finder M as an ingredient specialist. It does have a decent rate here. It's nowhere near the Blastoise and the Charizard and the Venusaurs, but it's okay. And then the other just must have is some sort of inventory. If you don't have inventory, you will run into problems because the honey and the apple are quite low base ingredients, and those typically tend to yield a higher number. So with the addition of the ingredient rate here being quite low, you're just gonna clog up your inventory with berries. And for the most part, I don't recommend the berry finding on these Pokemon just because you have a problem with inventory and you shouldn't make that problem bigger. The other thing to consider here is natures. I have covered which sub-skills and natures you should go for, generally speaking, for the ingredient specialists. It is in the Pokemon Sleep for Beginners playlist, and I can just mention 2 of the best natures. Main skill, chance down, and ingredient finding up is going to be particularly strong on the Pinsir because we really don't care about this level 1 main skill. And the other one worth mentioning is the mild. If you do run that, what would you say, the healer Pokemon, then whoa, the ingredient rate is not going to be too affected because you're at a good energy all day and you do get the boost here. One thing in my opinion that should be avoided for the most part is the quiet nature. It's not super detrimental overall since you do get the ingredient finding here. But a big problem with some of these Pokemon, as you will see, is they are quite rare, they are hard to befriend, and so the candy is not going to be good. For the Pinsir, potentially in the future, if there is a bug-focused area, then the encounter rate could be drastically increased, and maybe you will be seeing a lot more people running the Pinsir, and therefore being more interested in the candy, and the friend list can help you out. But for the most part, I would say try to avoid the EXP gains down nature if you can. Okay, so we've covered a decent chunk of the sub skills here. For the most part, the Pokemon that are the apple holders, they are quite fast, so you don't really have to think too much about the helping speed. In my opinion, it is much more important with the inventory, maybe even a double inventory. Oh man, if you can find something like this, whoa, hang on. If you can find something like this, that would be a dream scenario. And it is the Hopes and Dreams simulator. So if we put in the ingredient finder S here, and then at the end, just to top it all off, we put the helping speed M. But yeah, so we have covered now nature's sub skills, and we can pop back into the comparison because there are a lot of ingredient specialists that do carry the apples. And for the most part, it's going to be Pinsir and it's going to be Delibird. So now that we've had a good look at Pinsir, we can just pop both of these next ones up here on the screen at the same time. And if you saw my cacao video, then we've already talked quite a bit about these two. Absol is a really good cacao Pokemon, and because it has that low inventory, the same problem as Pinsir, and it has the low ingredient rate, for the most part, you do not want the berry finding at all, and you want the ingredient finding M and the inventory. So same thing's going to be here with the Delibird, low ingredient rate, low inventory, no evolutions, you want the inventory, and then you want the ingredient finding M. The last thing to consider is just the ingredient list here. Delibird can potentially be a good egg double apple, but for the most part, eggs are somewhat rare of an ingredient. If you have a really good Abomasnow with the tomato double eggs, then maybe you can consider some variation here with the apples, but for the most part, I think with Delibird, you should at least have 2 slots with eggs, and then one of these can be an apple. I don't recommend the cacao. It's not like a super detrimental ingredient since all of these work well with the dessert week dishes. But yeah, double eggs and then one apple slot is for the most part what you're looking for in the Delibird. And these drops are pretty big, 6 and 9 apples at a time. If you have the increased ingredient rate and the increased inventory, that's going to serve you quite nicely. I think overall, potentially Absol is one of the better double apple Pokemon just because of this insane 12 apples and 8 apples. And at that point, you really, really want the bigger inventory. So with Absol as well, it is a tricky Pokemon just because the triple cacao is so strong, but the double apple is also strong. So maybe you can even double hunt Absol, but then it's a rare Pokemon, so you won't be getting all that many candies for it. So it's just a very late game Pokemon in my opinion, but super strong. So if we revise this a little bit, we probably want the rash nature just because we really don't care about the main skill at all whatsoever. Then we remove some of these. This is going to be an incredible Absol. If you can find this pattern and double apple, you're so set, like I don't even know. This is the Hopes and Dreams simulator, so if you just find a variation of this, then you're going to be pretty happy. Like cacao, apple, cacao is not a problem. Double cacao, apple is also not a problem, but it's just sometimes nice to double up on the ingredients so that you get a good chunk of the main ingredient that you're looking for once you do put that ingredient specialist out there. The combo effect with the dessert week here is strong, so for the most part on the Absol, the main thing is going to be increasing your ingredient rate and the inventory, and then you can call it a day and just pat your shoulder. So I think we can cycle back a little bit here and peek a look at the rest of the Pokemon. The Absol, the Delibird, and the Pinsir are the only ingredient specialists at this point in time that do carry the Apple. There could potentially be an update in the future, and I do think it is likely, where we'll see a triple Apple potential ingredient specialist. That would be very exciting. So it may be the case that you want to hold a little bit back on investing into the double Apple spots. So for example, on the Absol, maybe you find cacao, apple, cacao, and call it a day. And same with the Delibird, if you find egg, apple, egg, then it's super nice. And then you can bring out that apple farmer later. One Pokemon that I want to jump to right away is a skill specialist that happened to have a pretty decent apple list here. You can potentially end up with a triple apple Gardevoir, and that would be pretty nice. The corn is nice as well. I wouldn't recommend the leek just because it is the non-interesting item during dessert week, but obviously as an S tier skill specialist, the main thing you're looking for is the main skill. It's a nice to have. If you somehow end up with the triple apple, you can be fairly happy with that, but don't get too carried away here with the ingredient list on a skill specialist. So, but yeah, the Gardevoir is definitely a cool Pokemon for that. And then if we go through just in order here, this is going to be a rapid fire just so that you are familiar with some of these Pokemon. We have the Raticate, also has the potential for triple apple. We have the Raichu. This was a particularly useful Pokemon during Raikou research because you got that extra ingredient as an electric type Pokemon, and that was pretty strong. We have the Clefable, also has the triple apple. We have the Golduck. We covered this a little bit in the cacao video. Golduck is actually quite a nice double apple skill specialist, so that is something you could definitely consider, even despite this low ingredient rate, just because once you do get the apples here, you get quite a bit of them. You will run into inventory issues with the Golduck, but for the most part, it is a skill specialist, so the skills is what you should focus on. It's just if you happen to find overall a nice Golduck and it does have the inventory up and it does have the double apple, well, good for you. So we then have the Wobbuffet. Oh, this is an F tier Pokemon. It's so bad. I almost don't want to bring it up here because some of you are gonna get carried away. It's like, wow, it's a triple apple, but don't use the Wobbuffet. Then we have the Slacking. I actually had a decent amount of feedback talking positively about the Slacking in the how to use Slacking video that I did and on Discord and everything. Personally not a fan, but if you can make it work, then I'm happy for you. And then we have the Altaria. Altaria, I would probably recommend you to do triple eggs, but it is a berry specialist, so you should be focused on the berries and the berries. And the berries, it's just a nice to have because of that rare ingredient. And it's not even rare, it's just hard to get your hands on with the eggs. And the two last Pokemon are Gallade, obviously. It has the same ingredient list as the Gardevoir. And you have the Dedenne. The Dedenne has the potential to be quite useful during Dessert Week, even as a skill specialist. So, we've now covered every ingredient specialist, berry specialist, and skill specialist with the apples. And overall, probably the Pinsir combo is going to be the best. And then on the Delibird and the Absol, if you can find double cacao, apple, in some combo for the Absol, and double egg and apple on the Delibird, then you're going to be pretty set. So I hope overall this video was helpful to you. You can leave a like if you found it helpful. Let's see it. If the camera want to give it to me. No, the bubbles went the other way. Thank you for watching.